Diego Rodríguez, Head of Space Systems Science with Sener.
That's correct.
Welcome to IAC 2024 and thanks for joining us on Australian Space TV.
It's a pleasure.
Proba-3, fascinating mission to study the Sun. You're launching from India in November 13th, so not far to go. But yeah, you just gave a briefing here. You had ESA, the Head of Science here as well. So ESA's obviously monitoring this science very closely. There's a few different directions we can go in terms of what's new on Proba-3, but particularly the optical laser control of multiple spacecraft all at once. Is this new science, or you're testing this now, right? And
That's
this will be
right.
the first time it's done?
Proba-3 has two objectives, and one is to demonstrate technology. And in particular, this technology of formation flying demands some specific metrology instruments.
Yep.
Okay, so to give you a sense of this objective, what we are trying to do is to put two satellites apart and separate them as far as 150 meters. However, during periods as long as 6 hours, we will maintain that formation very tightly with a precision which is in the order of 1 millimeter.
And so I think you mentioned it was travelling at 1,000 kilometres a second or something like that?
That's right. For that, we will do this testing in a very highly eccentric orbit, and in the apogee, in the upper part of this orbit, when we are above the Earth, around 60,000 kilometres, the speed with respect to the Earth is around 1 kilometre per second.
Right.
Okay. The gravitational field is not that high, but there is still a gravitational field, and so which tends to change the position of the satellites. We have to maintain in that conditions the formation, and for that we use a number of instruments. And what is new is this set of instruments and the GNC, especially the part of navigation that controls the formation. For that, we use a combination of instruments. In some periods, we use the GPS and the Galileo signals. But when we lose the signals, then we rely on other instruments. Basically, a camera that has some flashing lights in the occulter, and we make use also of a laser. The laser, which is reflected in the other satellite, provide us the ranging. It's the sensor that will give us the exact position of one satellite with respect to the other.
And the longer term sort of goal here is to have multiple craft, and you can almost build this out in terms of a swarm, and all of these craft can operate in alignment with each other, and you mentioned almost like in a locked position?
That's right. Well, as I said before, we have to one technological objective, and for that, first, what we do is to resize the formation flying. We get both satellites very close, and then we again put both very apart. In other cases, we retarget, which means we tilt the position of one of them, and then the other one has to find it and recover the formation. And the nice thing about this is the whole thing is made autonomously. I mean, there is no intervention from operations.
Yeah, it's doing it all on its own and through machine learning,
So the intelligence which is concentrated in the GNC, in the satellite we call the occulter, take care of the whole thing. And then we have cold gas actuators, which are a kind of sprites that provide very little forces to compensate the deviation from the nominal position.
Look, it's an amazing science. The other thing I like about this particular mission is the first fixed formation mission, but you're actually doing some real science. You're going to do a solar eclipse for 6 hours to allow science to study the sun.
Yeah, the coronagraph is the best example of how can we apply this technology. Now, you see, when we have a natural eclipse, it will be very nice to maintain the eclipse for hours.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it only lasts some seconds, and the scientists would like to reproduce that as for long periods.
There must be an amazing amount of science going to come out of this. It's been the longest eclipse we've ever studied. Is that
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
It's going to be 6 hours in every period of 20 hours, which is the time that it takes both satellites to complete
Amazing.
So they are really excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and obviously there's, is there any expectations on what may well come out of this?
Oh,
They're
yes,
talking about
absolutely.
predicting solar winds and the like.
As Mr. Shukov explained, there is a lot of interest in the corona.
Yeah.
The corona provides the hints, the keys of how these phenomena occurring at the surface, like the flares, which has so much impact in the Earth life, occur. And they don't know yet. They know that there is very relevant the magnetic fields, but in reality they don't know what is going on up there. And the problem is it's not possible to see this corona, the surface of the sun. And the reason was explained by him, because there is so much light that you cannot look at it.
And also to be doing it from space as well in that way, it's unimpeded,
not
right?
only that, due to the problem of diffraction, it's not enough that you put this plate shadowing the sun. You need to be very far away in order so the effects of diffraction are lower.
Yeah.
And that's why they are very happy that we can put both satellites 150 meters away.
Wow.
So they will have a long time to take pictures with a very stable system, as if, as I mentioned, there was a kind of a structure invisible holding both satellites. This is what is amazing about this mission.
So launch is on November 13. What's the sort of the timeline of the mission itself?
Yeah.
When would you start to expect to get the
we
data
launch
back?
it in November, so it will take let's say around 4 months where we calibrate the system, we check that everything's ongoing, and then after that we start the real science. The duration of the mission is going to be 2 years.
Okay.
So it's more than enough to make the science we will look for. Obviously, we have a limitation in the coal gas. Eventually, it will exhaust, and which is a real limit for the mission. But as I said before, the number of periods will be very high, so they will have the opportunity to do many hours of observation. And after 5 years, both satellites will enter in the atmosphere and they will be destroyed.
One last thing is, any new science in the actual mechanics and the optics and the lasers that are being applied back on Earth? Are we learning how to, I don't know, sort of drone formations or the like, or in terms of the optics? Because I know NASA's been working on this as well, right?
We've developed
communication.
We've developed ad hoc for this mission several of these instruments. There is a lateral sensor. There are other instruments that I didn't mention, but which are also key. A lateral sensor, for instance, that provides feedback for the lateral movements of the satellites, which is a complex optical system. It's the first time such a system is going to be tested, but probably the real technology is putting the whole thing together. One thing we've learned, and that definitely we thought was going to be much easier, is the operation side.
Yeah.
How, when you combine all this information coming not from one but from 2 satellites, you have to be careful. If something goes wrong, you have the risk that either both collide or evaporate.
Yeah, or it just
one
doesn't
of
work,
them,
right?
So we found, we analyzed all failure cases, that to keep the whole thing running properly is really the difficult thing.
Well, look, it's one of those things that when it came through my brief, it was like, okay, this looks pretty interesting. Apart from the coronagraph science there as well, but the mechanics of flying 2 satellites together and then locking them into position. It's definitely one to watch, and over at least the next 2 to 5 years, definitely one to watch. But Diego, thank you so much for joining us today on Australia in Space TV.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you more in Australia as well, but we'll hear more from you as this science develops.
Well, this show next year will be at Sydney, I believe.
Correct, yes.
So it will be a great opportunity to go to Australia.
Wonderful. But thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of IAC.